The long-awaited Donna Adelson trial started yesterday. Jury has already been selected. That was earlier in the week. Everything got rolling yesterday. So much to unpack. Watch this intro first, and then we'll dive right into it. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. In my new studio, every time I look at the pink, I'm like, But anyway, I digress. Donna Adelson. It was like Christmas morning for the true crimers, recappers out there. Like, we have been waiting for this trial for a long, long time. This murder happened in 2014. This all stems out of the murder of Dan Markel, FSU law professor back in 2014. And I'm going to tell you the whole story. I'm going to give you the synopsis of the opening, so you kind of have the breakdown of what's going on here. Let me set the stage for you a little bit. Same judge that we had for the Charlie Adelson murder trial for the FSU law professor. Different judge then presided over Catherine McManaman's trial and Sigfredo Garcia's trial. So, same prosecutor, Georgia Kappelman. She has, like, this has been her life's mission, is to bring down this Adelson family. She has been on all of these cases. She is trying this case with Sarah Dugan, who gave the opening statement. She also gave the opening statement in the Charlie Adelson case, which is when she came into the picture. So this is her second time around. George's fourth, her second. On the defense side, we got new lawyers. We've not seen these lawyers before representing Donna Adelson. Now, she tried to come in with the same lawyer as Charlie had. This thing was set for trial previously, and on the day of trial previously, her attorney, the one that represented Charlie as well, had to recuse himself because that's a conflict of interest, because Charlie's going to come testify. In fact, he was seen getting on a plane yesterday. Like, well, he's in prison, but I don't know where he's housed, but apparently not in Tallahassee, but he was spotted being transported to Tallahassee to testify. We also know that Wendi Adelson will probably take the stand on Monday. That's going to be so exciting, and I'll have that live for you. So I'm doing all these lives. I'm showing the lives just in case you're at home, you want diamond paint or craft, and you want to have something to watch. But I am still doing the recaps. So what happened on day one? So pretty much the same opening Sarah Dugan gave in the Charlie Adelson case. Only difference is when she gave this opening in Charlie Adelson, she had to focus on Charlie. This one was more focused on Donna. Obviously, that's the defendant now. So she starts out by saying Donna Adelson had a big problem, and that was Dan Markel. This murder occurred July 18th of 2014. Now, who's Donna Adelson? Donna Adelson is the mother of Wendi Adelson, who was married to Dan Markel. They got divorced. That divorce had been final for about 13 months at the time of the murder. So, on the morning of July 18th, 2014, Dan Markel is shot in the head in broad daylight. And that morning, he had taken his two young sons. At the time, they were 3 and 4 years old. So they're teenagers now. And he takes them to preschool. Then he goes to work out. Comes back home. It's probably about 10:30-ish. And but all of that morning, he's being followed by 2 hired hitmen who are the ones that end up taking his life. So subsequent, now we know that there's a neighbor who heard a loud noise, looked out the window, saw this light colored Toyota Prius pulling out of the driveway. Ends up going over, checking on Dan, finding him in this devastating state, calls 911. Dan is taken to the hospital where he survives for between 11 and 14 hours, depending on who you ask. We're not really sure, but he dies on the 19th. He passes away. So he was 41 years old at the time that he's pronounced. So at the crime scene, no evidence, no trace of who would have done this. Nothing. So the police suspect that because there's no evidence, this may have been a professional killing. So they follow two tracks, and this is what she talks about during her opening. They follow two tracks to kind of figure out who's who. First, they're going to try to identify this vehicle, and there's that track. And then the next track is who would have a motive to kill Dan Markel. And later on, we're going to find out that there was a third track where they're following the money. So this took years of tireless work by the police before they could even make an arrest. I don't think they made an arrest until beyond 2 years. I mean, for 2 years, they were looking at surveillance footage, phone records, toll records, whatever they could find, bank surveillance footage. They had to put together something, and they had to follow these paths, and it just took forever. So I got to turn somewhere else in my notes here. So where do those paths end up leading? Both paths end up leading to Charlie and Donna Adelson. Now, who's Charlie? I've got all kinds of names to throw out there for you. Charlie is Donna's son, Wendi Adelson's brother. So the victim is his brother-in-law. So all the tracks lead to them. So Donna was very, very involved in this divorce, very contentious divorce. And there's so much more to this story. Like, I could go on for hours just telling this story. Like, Dan didn't want this divorce. It was Wendi. She wanted to relocate to South Florida. And I mean, she didn't like Tallahassee. She'd written a book where it kind of mirrors this whole thing. And it's very haunting. Anyway, she files a motion for relocation. She wants to move her boys to South Florida. That was denied in June of 2013, about 13 to 14 months before the murder, with prejudice. Now, with prejudice means this is done. This is final. You can never come to the court again and ask. You cannot take these boys out of Tallahassee. So they got to come up with some other way. Now, what happens? Donna is painted as this extremely controlling person. She's got opinions about how Wendi should live her life, who she should date. She's a Jewish grandma. And she works at the dental office. Her husband's a dentist. He owned, well, who owns it is kind of a matter of who you ask. The Adelson Institute. His son, Charlie, was very honest, and he would kind of travel around different locations. And I think at one point did own the business. It passed back and forth between him and his father a few times. So anyway, Donna's very involved in this divorce and has made this her mission. Like, there's going to be emails that the jury's going to see showing, her, name calling Dan Markel, that this is the highest priority, that she get Wendi relocated to South Florida. They have to do this at all costs. This is all the emails that the jury is going to see. So some of her plans that are going to come out in this email. These emails are, she tries to bribe him with $1 million. That's one of their plans. Then she's going to, let's just aggravate him. If we aggravate him enough, he'll relent and he'll move to South Florida with the boys. So the way they were going to do this is dress the boys up as Christians and put them in front of a Catholic school and take photographs, which would aggravate a Jewish family. Because Dan Markel, the Markels he's actually originally from Canada and very devout in their faith. They, to the point where at the wedding of Dan and Wendi, there was a contention with the rabbi because, it wasn't kosher. I mean, like this, yeah, they were really, really into their faith. So then Sarah Dugan, the prosecutor, she goes on and she talks about the bump. Now, what is the bump? You're going to hear this term a lot. What happened was, I told you it took them 2 years to piece all this together. And I'm just talking about the first track now, the who would have the motive, Donna. It takes them 2 years to put all this together. So by now, Donna and Charlie and Wendi, we're not going to talk about her because her name gets mentioned almost like 0 times during the prosecution's opening, maybe 1 or 2 times, but certainly was not thrown in there a lot. Now, I will point out that Wendi is an unindicted co-conspirator. And when she testifies, she's doing it with immunity. So she's not immune from prosecution. She's just immune to the point where, like, whatever she says on the stand can't be used against her, but she can still be prosecuted at some later date. And that is highly anticipated. In any case, back to the bump. What's the bump? So 2 years have gone by. They think they've gotten away with this thing. They're going on about their lives. The boys are in the local Jewish school. Everybody's living with grandma. They're living happily ever after. Nobody's talking about the murder. They got away with it. It's done. So they got to get the chatter going. They got to get this going. And what they found out through wiretaps and phone records is that and she used this train analogy, which I really liked, that where one car is linked to another car is linked to another car. So you've got anytime Donna needs help with something, she calls Charlie, and Charlie will call Catherine McManawa, who he was dating, and Catherine McManawa would call her baby daddy, Sigfredo Garcia, but Sigfredo never talked to Charlie, and Donna never talked to Catherine. It was just this trade. And then it would go back and forth between the cars, but not from one car to they were all linked, which I thought was a great, great analogy. Anyway, so we're going to hear, the jury's going to hear all about this bump, and I'm not going to go into all of the details. Sunlight's coming in weird here today. I'm sorry. I'm not going to go into all the details of the bump because we're going to hear about that in a lot of detail as the evidence presents itself. But it does what it was intended to do. It gets them talking because Donna talks to Charlie, and Charlie talks to Catherine, and Catherine talks to Sigfredo, and now everybody's talking. So then they arrest Sigfredo and Luis Garcia. And that whole ball gets rolling. So let me talk about the second track. Now, the second track is where they're looking for the vehicle. They identify the vehicle. They know they're looking for a light color Prius. So they're looking at surveillance footage from the gym, and they identify a light color Prius. And they kind of follow surveillance footage around Tallahassee. They have, at the time, I don't know if they still do, had surveillance cameras on local buses, and they pulled all that. I mean, like I said, this took years. And they identified the Prius riding around town following Dan Markel. Then they pull phone records, and pull all the phone calls that were in that vicinity of the gym, and there's some with South Florida area codes. So the jury's gonna hear how all of that comes back to Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera. Then we find out Sigfredo Garcia is the father of Catherine Magbanua children, and Catherine Magbanua, lo and behold, is dating Charlie Adelson. And Sarah Dugan, the prosecutor, she points out that after this bump occurs and this, everybody's talking to everybody, they do arrest Catherine Magbanua, Sigfredo Garcia, and Luis Rivera. They don't arrest Charlie and Donna yet, but they arrest those three. After Catherine Magbanua's arrest, she gets a phone call. She calls her lawyer, and 20 minutes later, this lead investigator gets a call back from Charlie's attorney. Isn't that interesting, right? Right. Okay, so she gets into some she gets into some specifics about Donna after her arrest. Well, even before her arrest, like she goes through, that they arrest Charlie, he's prosecuted, he's been convicted. So now the jury knows that Charlie's been convicted of this. And then 1 week after he's convicted, Donna Adelson is stopped on the jetway boarding a plane with a one-way ticket to Vietnam. They find on her phone records that she had explored which country doesn't have an extradition. I'm saying that wrong. Extradition agreement with the United States, and Vietnam doesn't. So they wouldn't have been extradited from Vietnam if she had gotten there. Well, they stopped her on the jetway and made that arrest. I don't know at the time if they were actually ready to arrest her, but they had to. So they arrest her, and post-arrest, they have some jailhouse snitches that we're going to hear from. Now, this is stuff I did not know. So jailhouse snitches, and there's an outline of what she was trying to bribe them to say about Catherine Magbanua and how she lied during Charlie. Catherine Magbanua, you know how she's lying when her lips are moving? During her trial, her 2 trials, she took the stand and had a story. I didn't do it. I don't know anything, denying the whole thing. Then during Charles' trial, she has a little change of heart. And I got to tell you, she's got 2 young kids at home. This is just between you and I. The prosecution waited 6 years hoping that she would turn state's evidence, that she would testify, in exchange for a good deal so she could get home and see her kids. She would not do it. She maintained that not guilty right up until she got life in prison. Once she got that life in prison, then she started changing her mind, changing the tune. Yeah, I want to talk to you. Anyway, long story short, she comes into Charlie's trial. Yes, I lied during my trial. I really love Sigfredo, and I was trying to protect him, and blah, blah, blah. So then she tells the whole story of how after the murder, she came to Charlie's house, she got the money, blah, blah, blah. And where was I going with this? Oh, where was I going with this? I'm telling you, it's such a long story. Honest to God. Where was I? Okay, hold on. I'm going to find it. So she plans to testify during this trial too. Now, I don't know if they made a deal since then to reduce her sentence or maybe give her life with parole. I don't know. but so that maybe someday she'll see her children. In any case, she does plan, they're going to call her as a witness to testify in this case. And Donna wanted to control this. She wanted to bribe some people that were in prison to say they heard Catherine say blah, blah, blah. Anyway, whatever. But there's a whole outline of how they should answer questions and stuff. And I'm like, what? So the jury's going to see this outline. I can't wait to see this outline. All right, so let's get into the first day of witnesses. Oh my gosh, we're already 20 minutes in. I like to keep these relatively short because we got things to do. So first we hear from the neighbor, James Geiger. He and his wife, they're sitting down. It's 10:30 in the morning. They're both on their iPads. They hear a loud popping, bang. Popping and bang are two different things, but he uses both adjectives, popping and bang. And so they go to the window. Gladys Kravitz. No, anyway, they go to the window and they look out the window. Now, he and Dan live next door to each other. If you look out of this neighbor's window, directly to the right of him is Dan Markel's property. So he looks left, he looks right. When he's looking right, he sees this light-colored Toyota Prius pulling away, backing out pretty fast, and then it takes off. So he's like, wonder what's going on. This would totally be me. I'm the nosy neighbor. I'm going to be looking it up on my Ring camera. Anyway, he runs outside. It was 14 years ago. They didn't have Ring cameras. So he runs outside, starts to walk next door. He sees that the garage door is open and that Dan's car is in the garage and the vehicle's running. So he figures, okay, he's headed to work. Everything's fine. So, because his first thought was somebody must have broken into Dan's house. But when he sees Dan's car in the garage and it's running and he figures he's headed to work, no, nobody broke in. So he goes back home. And he gets home and he's like 3 or 4 minutes pass and he's like, I guess he's still looking out the window. He notices that Dan still hasn't left for work. And he's like, let me go back and check on him. Now, the clock is ticking here. So he goes back and lo and behold, now he goes into the garage. The car's running. There's the front driver's window is shattered. He looks in the vehicle. He sees Dan bleeding profusely. He's unresponsive. He calls 911. Oh, he forgot his phone. He had to run home, get his phone, and call 911. He's on the phone with 911 for 14 minutes. We did get to hear the 911 call, or part of. We didn't listen to 14 minutes of it, but we heard the part where he calls 911. In any case, emergency responders come out. They take him to the hospital. Okay, so that's him. And the whole time I'm thinking to myself, these witnesses are either really, really old now, or they're retired, or like they kind of get Wendi on trial soon, or we're going to lose all of our witnesses. In any case, so then they have on the stand. Who was next? Let's see. The first responding officer. So, the 911 call is made. This guy, he was sitting at the station doing paperwork. He hears the call go out. He's like, let me go out there. He's the first one to get there. He sees Dan Markel in the vehicle, unresponsive. Now, it's a crime scene. He doesn't really want to touch anything. The car's running. So what he does is he actually reaches into the vehicle, unlocks the car, goes around to the passenger side, opens the door, and then turns the engine off. 911, emergency responders are coming out. He unloads the gym bag out of the front seat so that they can get to Dan Markel. They come, take him to the hospital. And I do want to point out that before he took the stand, Dan Markel's mother, who's a lovely, lovely woman, she's in the pews. She gets up and she leaves because they're going to start showing photos. And they do show photos, graphic photos of Dan Markel. So anyway, this officer checks the house, safety check of the house just to make sure, nothing is disturbed. He says no signs of burglary or anything, forced entry, nothing like that. Nobody in the house. So that was all clear. And that was his involvement. Then we get Joanne Maltese, who was a crime scene investigator. She took a lot of photos. She collected evidence. She collected Dan's phone, his glasses, his wallet. Later that day, they confiscate Wendi Adelson's vehicle. She processes that, does all the photographing of that, and collects. And this is going to come into play later, so keep this in mind. They collect a receipt for a bottle of liquor. So, yeah. Oh, she did collect a fingerprint from the vehicle of Dan Markel, but it was not suitable for comparison, as are most fingerprints. Never, we always have that problem. Not suitable for comparison. So that didn't lead anywhere. Then we get, I need some coffee. Then we get the medical examiner. Now, he's talking about his background education, the process of the autopsy. He goes through the photos and all this. And they haven't even really gotten into it. Like, he's just given his background education, and Georgia Kappelman she's going to start putting these photos up and asking him questions. And the judge stops everything and sends the jury out and admonishes Donna Adelson because she's sobbing, crying over these photographs. He's like, you're going to have to control your emotions. And he tells her, go to the restroom, get yourself in order or whatever. So they come back and we finish up with the medical examiner. Cause of death, gunshot wounds, the face and head, and manner of death, of course, is a homicide. So then the next witness is Craig Isom. He was the lead investigator at the time. Like I said, a long time ago. He's retired now. Tallahassee Police Department. But he was the one that informed Wendi Adelson of what happened. And how he did that was he found out she was having lunch at a local restaurant. So he goes there, goes to the table where she's at with her people, and she asks her, he says, can you step over here? Can you come away from the table and step over here? I need to talk to you. I don't know what I would do if somebody ever did that to me. Came into a restaurant and asked me to, what? I would be dying. He tells her. And then takes her down to the police department and he interviews her. Now, I need to point out here, she says, because he's like, is there anybody that, first of all, what's your alibi? Where were you? Well, I was home waiting for my TV to be repaired. She was waiting for the Geek Squad from Best Buy to show up and fix her TV. Like, just go buy a new one, honey. But here's the rub. TV, in this case, is a metaphor for the murder of Dan Markel. And she actually tells this. Now, he doesn't know that yet. This is something we've all pieced together over the years. But she tells him, my brother, he's joking. He says, when he bought me that TV, and he says, when he bought it, he said, I bought you this as a divorce present because it was cheaper than hiring hitmen. Yep. So we're going to hear that TV referenced a lot, like during the bump, during the phone calls that follow the bump. TV is mentioned. Okay. Where are we? Okay, so this is now, there were a lot of pretrial motions, but one of the pretrial motions was the defense wanted to prevent what happened in Charlie's case. In Charlie's case, Georgia Kappelman went up with the divorce file that was like this, she's like, here's the divorce file, which just visually has a really good effect. So they wanted to prevent that from happening in this trial. So they made a motion that this divorce file shouldn't even come into, it's not relevant. And the judge agreed, it's not relevant. And she's like, well, there's a large portions, Donna Adelson was very involved in this divorce. There's large portions of this file that she had a hand in. And so the final ruling was that if the prosecution could lay a foundation, and by laying a foundation, I mean they would have to show whatever document from that divorce file they wanted into evidence. They would have to show the jury how Donna knew about this piece of paper or this evidence. Was she aware of it? And we're going to hear a lot of the evidence was emails and stuff that she wrote. So she certainly was aware of it. In any case, so that was the ruling. And the judge had told them, now you need to get together, and whatever evidence you're going to present out of this divorce file, defense, you're going to need to look at it. And if you have objections to any of it, we're going to deal with this ahead of time. Well, that didn't happen. So she hands, in this case, Georgia Keppelman hands this lead investigator a smaller binder, but still pretty thick. So what Georgia has done is she has taken out all of the stuff she knows she can lay a foundation for that Donna knew about during this divorce into a separate folder. And then when she hands it to her, she goes, I'm going to hand you the divorce file of everything that Donna knew about. And she hands it to him. And it doesn't have quite the same impact as the bigger file, but it's still pretty impactful. And then she starts to bring into evidence these emails. The first question she asks him was, what did she call, in her emails, what did she call Dan Markel? What names did she use for Dan Markel? And right away, there's objections. And the judge, first they go sidebar. He finally sends the jury out. And he's like, what is going on here? You guys were supposed to do this ahead of time. He's very pissed because he thinks he's resolved it, that he brings back the jury in. And right away, there's an objection. Lack of foundation. How did Donna know about it? And so, and he's like, wait a minute. They sent the jury out again. And he's like, did you guys not go through this ahead of time? And the defense is like, well, they gave us a folder and everything was, out of order. And we didn't, blah, blah, blah. Some sort of lame excuse. And he's like, I'm inclined to send the jury home for today. I don't want to waste their time. And we'll just sit and go through every document. We'll sort this out, but you should have done it ahead of time. Well, they don't want to do that. They don't want to send the jury home. So they quickly work out. I think what they're decided to do is on Monday before trial, they're going to go through the documents with the judge and hear the foundation arguments. But a lot of the foundation is going to be laid on Monday through the testimony of Wendi Adelson. So they'll bring this lead investigator back and go through the emails and through the divorce file. But they kept going with his testimony. And they talked about how Donna or Dan had filed a motion against Donna. And the motion was to limit her access to the children for supervised visitations because he believed that she was disparaging him in front of the kids. This motion was pending at the time of the murder. So now the jury knows that. Then we find out in the emails, she called him Elvis. She called him an a-hole. She called him a major effort. She talks about the bribe, how they're going to bribe him with $1 million. She talks about the church stuff, how they're going to dress up the boys, change, make it look like they're changing their religion to Christianity and put them in front of a Catholic church and take pictures. And she talks about how Dan has a $2.7 million in life insurance. Yeah. Anyway, The other thing that came in through the lead investigator before the end of the day was that nowhere in his review of the evidence was there documentation to support that Catherine McManama actually worked for the Adelson Institute, because there was evidence that Donna Adelson was compensating. She was signing a paycheck to Catherine McManama every 2 weeks. This girl was getting a paycheck after the murders. But she didn't work there. There's no evidence that she ever worked there. She didn't do a thing. He couldn't find anything that she ever worked there. Just the paycheck she was getting. So we also hear from Luis Rivera. Luis Rivera took the stand. Now, Luis Rivera is currently in prison serving a sentence, in this case, of 19 years, which is concurrent with another case that he had, a drug-related case. Now, he is a member of the Latin Kings gang down in Miami. Supposedly, he was the head of the Latin Kings. There was a motion prior to trial to keep that information away from the jury. And so far, they have not heard that he was head of the Latin Kings. I don't know that it's not relevant. I don't know that they're going to hear it. But so he's going to serve his 19-year sentence. And with time, with gain time and all that good stuff, he'll be out fairly soon, probably. I suspect he's been in jail now for 10, 12 years or so, probably 12 years or more. So he'll be out pretty soon. But in any case, he testified. Not the brightest, crayon in the box, just not. But he does testify about, driving to, first of all, they were hired by Catherine. Catherine was, well, he understood that Catherine hired them, but he understood that there was a woman. They were doing this so that there was a woman could get her kids. Wendi, obviously. He doesn't know who Wendi is, but, he just, so a woman could get her kids. On his part, he understood he was going to get $35,000. Now, they made 2 trips to Tallahassee. One is, I don't remember what the reason was, but he went up, that didn't happen. They came back. They go a second time. They knew that they had to get this done on a particular day because Dan Markel was leaving town the next day. How did they know that? They knew that their money was coming from Catherine and that she was kind of, that was where their information, that, remember the train car? She was getting her information from Catherine. Now, I remember him testifying in previous, against Sigfredo. Like when they came to Tallahassee, the jury doesn't know all this, but when they came to Tallahassee, I'm telling you what, they were doing drugs, and they were like, there was one time they got a flat tire, they had to get that repaired, and it's just comedy of errors. But anyway, he said they pulled into, they followed him around that morning. They pull into the driveway. He's driving the car. Sigfredo gets out of the car and goes and shoots Dan Markel. And then they return to South Florida, where he proceeds to buy a motorcycle. Okay, so that's where we're going to leave off for today. I think you guys that's enough to digest. Yes. So if you want to see the opening statements or part of, what happened on day 1, I've broken up it. Sorry about that. I've broken it into 2 videos. One is the before lunch. The other one is after lunch. So if you want to see any part of that, I'll try to timestamp the different things for you. So if you want to just see one part of it versus another, you can go in and do that. Oh, my word. Okay. Sorry. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and I will see you in the next video. I look forward to Monday. I'm going to be live for the entire day. I may be in and out of that video, but I'll be live if you guys want to watch. I know you have a choice of where you watch this. Court TV, Law and Crime. Oh, Law and Crime didn't cover it. Court TV had it on. I didn't find Law and Crime feed, which was interesting. Some other YouTubers, but I appreciate when you sit in my live and I get the watch time. It helps the channel. which, by the way, subscribe. It's free. And hit that like button. See y'all in the next video.